What's good, y'all? It's that time of the year, and we've got bills to pay. So if you enjoy listening to the show, hit the links in the description to support by donating, joining our Patreon, or buying some new merch. If about 10% of you listening right now donate $10 to support the show, we'd have enough to cover an entire year's worth of cost of production. Over the years, I've been very intentional about turning down ads for things that didn't align with our values, so you don't have to listen to us talk about gambling or boner pills or any of that other. But that's only possible through the support of you, our listeners. So we've created some new ways for you to support. And again, if you enjoy listening to the show, hit the links in the description to support by donating, joining our Patreon, or buying some of our new merch. And of course, don't forget to tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a compliment will take you, and we all know how good it feels to be on the receiving end of some appreciation. Now let's get into today's show. Welcome to the Exhaust Notes Podcast. What is good, everyone? Welcome to the Exhaust Notes Formula One Podcast, your new favorite Formula One podcast, your favorite Formula One podcaster's favorite podcast. Who else's favorite podcast? We need to know, because we had a huge bump in listeners over the last couple of weeks. So let us know if you're a new listener. Check in with us on social, in the Discord, wherever you may be. And let's talk about some racing, gentlemen. How you doing?
Glorious. It's Friday afternoon, and we're talking about racing. What could be better?
Yeah.
On a race weekend.
Couldn't have. My two best race friends. So I had on a race weekend. Races, nope, that's not it. Races, not races. Races for life. No, I'm excited because anything that we do today in the next 30 to 45 minutes will be far more exciting than that. I don't even know that dullard of a race. I've never characterized a race as a dullard, but the personality was a killer. That race would be immortal.
I think we had one position change in the top 10. Did I see that stat right?
Yeah, no accidents. No, not that I want to see accidents, but nothing to throw the pace of the race off. Nothing to test any strategies. Nothing to push anybody off their strategy. It was pretty much like you either chose wisely and you were Max Verstappen, or you chose poorly and you were the rest of the grid.
Or just McLaren.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's just. What is the prancing horse's orange equivalent? Like, I'm trying to think. What is the most well-known animal that's an orange animal that also prances? Anyway, there's maybe a tabby cat.
Yeah, it's real bad.
Are they the prancing tabby cat?
I didn't really have that on my bingo card for this year's McLaren stealing from Ferrari strategy team, but it seems.
So I have to ask the question then.
At least
we watched this race. Max is ahead the whole time, basically. Lando seemed to be a little bit slower than Oscar at certain moments. And Lando, seemed like he was saving tires, but never felt like he even was chasing Max at the end. So was it strategy or was it just Lando? Not to pick on him, because obviously he's a top driver for me. But
to me, it was definitely both, right? Because he kind of settled into that 1.5 seconds ish behind Max, and for a lot of the race, Oscar was able to kind of hang out in under a second behind Lando. But I don't know if he necessarily had the pace to pass him, because same car, low tire deg, all that stuff. But even when they told him to push and get after it on Max, this is Lando, he never was really able to break into that 1 second and stay there. I think he got close to a second a few times, but
Oscar was within 1 second of Lando for at least a good 10, 12 laps, right?
Well, the last half of the race, it felt like he was just chilling back there at 6, 7 tenths. But it doesn't really matter, because McLaren cemented their bad strategy by pitting Oscar first and then pitting Lando at the same time as Max.
Yeah.
He had no idea. They should have pitted. If they wanted to try to do the undercut on Max, they should have pitted Lando first and get it out, or get it through the pit lane and with the undercut.
So for For new fans of the sport, explain the undercut to people.
Okay. So the pace of the car, given a set of tires, slowly decreases over the life of that tire. They'll lose like 1/10 of a second per lap or whatever, something like that, let's just say. So in certain tracks and certain situations, it's actually advantageous to pit earlier than your rival in front of you, and get a fresher set of tires, which will have a bigger offset to the person in front of you's worn tires, say by like a second a lap or whatever, so that you can make up that time on track while they're assuming they pit the next lap or whatever it is. You can make up the difference in your deficit to them previously by just being faster for that next few laps by like a second or more. That's undercutting them.
And you're saying that Oscar pitted first. Lando should have cat and mouse through that better than they did, basically.
Well, they basically had two cars to fight the one car, right? Max being in front, and they did the order all wrong. They pitted. There was probably close to a 4-second gap between Oscar and Max, which you're not going to make up with an undercut.
Yeah.
So Lando being like a second and a half-ish away, pit Lando and try to undercut him on track, but then Max has to pit to cover off Oscar. So then Oscar can run super long and try to make it up with a tire gap at the end. So it gives him 2 chances to overtake Max instead of 0 chances, which they pitted Oscar early, too far of a gap, and then they pitted Lando at the same time as Max, which again, that whole pit lane incident and like, oh, he forced me off. It's like, no, you just tried to go for a gap that may have not been there, Lando.
Yeah.
No, it's just annoying. I mean, I hate saying this 3 races in, but it almost seems like there's a gentleman's agreement that, hey, McLaren, you win the constructors, and Red Bull will go ahead and give you Max the driver's title again. Because to your point, Todd, McLaren should be running away with this, but they've decided to put on their prancing red dancing shoes, and it is hilarious to watch because I have no dog in the fight. But if I was a McLaren fan, I would be furious because I think we're starting to see the fact that, and maybe this is just me not even having a hot take opinion, but I am getting less and less impressed with Lando in terms of race demeanor. He's almost become George Russell-esque for me, where it's just like, I'm Jim Halpert. I make schmaltzy faces at the camera. I'm adorable. Shouldn't you guys all like me? Whereas that killer on that team is the second guy. And I keep thinking that if there are going to be races like this continually through the season, putting on my big brain hat, I do think if Max leaves in 2 years, like you were saying, that's going to be the new number 1 Red Bull driver is going to be one Oscar Piastri, because at this point he's got to be fuming. Like, what else does he have to do to like at least get consideration? I'm not saying get it every single time.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
I'm
definitely
him the consideration or the benefit of the doubt.
I'm disappointed as a McLaren fan. I also I really wanted Yuki up there. I wanted to see Honda on the podium, not necessarily Max so much, but like I still am a Honda fan, and knowing that this is their last race in Japan, potentially, depending on if they're part of the series or if that is like potential force change to the V10s or V8s comes along. It was definitely a bummer. It was also it just felt weird. It just felt like, no, not to mean this as shots at anybody, but like it felt like Ferrari from a couple years ago, to your point, right? Like it was just like, wait, what's going on here? Like, why did we do this? And now we're just kind of chilling with this. Granted, it's a double podium. It's good points for the team, but like, I'd rather see somebody challenging the front runner than not. So.
But Nick, like as the noob of this group, it's very absurd to me because the best way I can describe McLaren's strategy is they're already playing prevent defense, and it's not even halfway through the first quarter of the season. Like they are just very complacent, it seems. And maybe you guys can clue me in on no road. This is actually part of the longer plan, but it just seems that they're almost getting too cute or too big for their britches. Like they assume that this is a foregone conclusion that they're going to win the constructors. So let's not break a sweat. Let's not break a nail. We'll get another race. And I do think that if that's the environment you're breeding your drivers in, eventually one of them's going to get complacent and the other one's going to get fed up and move. And I always was famous to say that, McLaren can't be orangeable in terms of just serving one driver over at the expense of the other. But now I hope that from a competition's perspective, as well as a human interest piece, like conflicting drivers make a team fun to watch. Maybe that's why I'm a big Esteban Ocon fan, because every time he's been put on a team, it's just fun to watch because he's going to antagonize the other person on his team. But this is getting kind of absurd because, like, I hate to sound like the broken record that I am, but nothing is seemingly moving the needle in terms of any sort of competitive drive between these two teams, or rather these two drivers.
I mean, I think McLaren definitely operates as a team first. You're driving for, the name on the front, not the name on the back kind of situation. But they've definitely said we don't have a number one driver, so we're not going to give any special treatment. That being said, if they want to go for race wins and ensure that they're going to win those constructors, they have to move stuff around. And I think I agree with you in a little bit in that it's the non-preferential treatment is almost preferential treatment with Lando, because it seems like it's been more in those situations where Oscar's behind him and has pace and they won't swap cars. And the one time they did that situation, I think, what was it last year when Lando almost didn't swap back and he was kind of being a little baby about it. I feel like they're scared to try to avoid that situation again. So, but it felt like they were maybe almost McLaren was thinking about it with like 15 laps or so to go, and then Lando sped up all of a sudden, and he got kind of 1.3, 1.2 seconds behind Max. So they're like, oh, okay, hold on. Lando's making a push. And then it kind of nothing happened.
Yeah, I go ahead.
But I was going to say, Todd, you are very quick in terms of being the historian of the group to bring up the chamber of fear. This is almost a chamber of paralysis analysis. They almost seem too gun shy to do anything because they think they're Doctor Strange and they're seeing the 14 million scenarios all at once, and they don't know what is the one scenario that's going to improve team dynamic.
I think it's just new to winning for this.
But Nick, you were saying
era of McLaren, right? I think it's there's hesitancy around any kind of team orders because of that. Look, team orders are definitely, potentially the downfall of the sport for a lot of fans, and also potentially the reason that you lose drivers from a team. And going like if you look at historically, McLaren, thinking about like what I was saying, like when I became a fan of the sport, it was like the McLaren Honda era of like Ayrton Senna and Prost, and like those guys like drove each other off the track multiple times every season that they were racing against each other, whether on the same team or not. Like there was just no letting off. So like there's kind of like a precedent in Formula One for all these guys having, more of an ego than your team orders will allow anyway. To Todd's point about the like, is Lando being a baby about it, and then eventually gives it back to Oscar for that one race. But I don't know. Like, I hope it's just hesitancy in the let's just get out in front with the team and the points to ensure that we're gonna win the constructors, and hopefully these guys get a little fire under their ass and get going, because like you clearly have the best car out there by everybody's account. Like there's not one person out there who's like, I think Ferrari's got the best car out this weekend, like, or Red Bull's got no, it's hands down McLaren has the best car. They are the team to beat right now. And yet like you're kind of like driving Miss Daisy last week, it's just like no drive whatsoever to like really fight for that podium or that, win.
I think there was other factors that led into that, and maybe we're being overly reactive to it, but it did feel like just kind of a blah race because they went with the hardest possible compounds on a freshly resurfaced Japan track where they actually did it the right way, as opposed to when they resurfaced, what was it, Turkey or whatever, the other, and they had zero grip. This course had all the grip. And so they had like low tire deg on a freshly resurfaced track, and it started out as kind of a damp race, so very conservative start, which was where we normally see all the action. But if you remember the start of that race, that was like the most well-behaved start of a race I've ever seen. Like everyone was like, "Oh no!" Like after you, like, "Oh, I'll make space."
Yeah.
Like everybody was really well behaved because it had all the potential to just be like yard sale at the beginning of the race.
So personal anecdote time. I was unable to get the proper ESPN credentials to watch the English feed of the race. So luckily for your boy, he had enough disposable income that he watched ESPN Plus, which only has the Spanish feed, which has its own benefits. The benefit I thought was the Spanish feed of soccer games and almost every other event I've ever watched always tends to be more exciting than the English feed because of the sheer histrionics of the commentators and just the passion. I was almost put to sleep by the Spanish feed of something, and I hate to be in America that's a thing, but I digress. Like, this is absurd. Like, come on. It was, if you wanted to see a race personified as George Russell, it's the Japanese Grand Prix of 2025. Like, everybody was overwhelmingly polite to the point where it's passive aggressive nice. And if there's one thing I hate,
it's also like
especially when there's high
equally as
involved.
frustrating for us because we gassed it up as like this is the best race of the year for the drivers, for the fans, for the blah blah blah. There's all this cool shit happening off the track, and now it's like, man, what a disappointment. So like, right.
We're going to get 3 listeners
speaking of disappointments,
of that episode.
Not really. I'm never disappointed in Yuki, but 12th was a little underwhelming. What do you guys think? Is he being sent on the death march in this Red Bull second seat?
It wasn't 18 to 20th. That's the best thing I can give it right now.
And he was a few cars ahead of Liam Lawson, right? So
again, should be like overall judgment of the weekend. It looks like he has a slightly better handle on the car. Again, that's one race. That was like a, beginner's nervous energy home race situation. So we have to give it time. But according to Dr. Evil, he is in the car for the rest of the year, no matter what. So, and it really doesn't make sense for them to like try to look at other options. He is as good as the rest of the options they have, being Liam Lawson and Isaac Hajar. So I think that's what we're going to get. And just like there doesn't need to be the pressure now. They already fumbled horribly with Liam, putting him in the car and then taking it away from him after 2 races. But I think Yuki overall did a decent job, and he can only go up from there. And I think Yuki has shown himself to be adaptable. He doesn't communicate it that well. He just screams expletives. But I think he will get there in a few races' time.
I think he's picked up the mantle of the most likable driver that's outside of your favorite Formula One team. We'll call it the Danny Rick Award. I mean, for everybody that thinks Lando Norris is charismatic and friendly, I actually think Yuki is that. It's just look through a funhouse mirror. But he's got house money. Like, there's nothing he could do, I think, outside of, let's say, consecutive DNFs where he crashes half the grid that I do believe Dr. Evil, and I hope lightning doesn't strike me as I finish the rest of this sentence. But I do think it's also going to be one of those things where whatever points he gets is going to be the bonus. And I think that's any other driver on the grid would get a similar kind of treatment with Red Bull in that second car. I just hope he does get that feel-good moment because, I mean, if we're using this in terms of Ghosts of Christmas Past, right? Pierre Gasly got a podium with not only Red Bull, but then when he moved to AlphaTauri, he got a podium there. I just want Yuki to get that podium. I think if I had to do the unofficial rankings of drivers that deserve the podium the most out of any non-podium winners, Yuki would be number one.
Obviously, would just love to see
Mr.
Yuki near the top at some point this season. It's also like it's tough because as much as like there's the excitement because it's Japan for Yuki, that's exponentially more pressure on him. Not that, you know, he didn't kind of hold his own. I mean, I'm curious kind of what you to what you were saying, Todd, about his adaptability with this car, because it just seems like this car is off. Even with Max, like it just, you know, granted Max, you know, won in Japan, but it seemed like a lot more work for Max to win than it would have been for McLaren or potentially even, you know, Mercedes or Ferrari. Just like there's not the complaint about the car constantly. And maybe that's just part of the strategy, but it seems it's an interesting point about the Red Bull car this year.
Yeah, I think Max commented on it actually, and he said something like if he was in the McLaren or a different car, they wouldn't have seen him. Like he was kind of like bragging in a way, like meaning that if he was in a car that he could actually drive fast instead of just like hang on for dear life and use all of his skill to keep it on the track and keep it in front of everybody. It would have been one of those races where he won by half a minute or more. And I actually believe him in that sense. I think if you put a McLaren in clean air, it would have been 15, 20 seconds up the road from everybody else, or, you know, more with Max. And Lando seems to do well once he's out front too in clear air. I think he would have had really good pace. And going back to the track itself, like we kind of talked about it. It's a really great driver's track. All the drivers love it because it's really fun to drive, and all the fans love it just because of the atmosphere. But it's never been, if we're honest, a great track for racing, at least not in Formula One, because there's one DRS zone. It's just a really fun track that has, let's say, it has the ability to cause a lot of chaos given the challenge of the track itself. And we've seen that in recent years with, what was it, like 2 years ago when it was raining so hard and they red flagged the race like 3 times?
Yeah.
After all the big crashes. So it's things like that that make Suzuka great, not necessarily the racing. And I think we're actually going to see, unfortunately, this weekend, because Bahrain is, I think, one of the worst tracks on the grid. I think it's going to be even more of a snooze fest. There's more chances for overtaking, so maybe we'll see some cool midfield battles, but I expect out front to be a pecking order based on car performance, and we won't see much change from there.
Speaking of radio messages, did Yuki have anything worthwhile in his radio commentary? Because I swear I didn't hear anything about it. And I figured we would have gotten the obligatory, like, Yuki thanking everybody for his opportunity in the Red Bull and then also saying konnichiwa to the Japanese audience. But, like, we got nothing. And that's really weird for me. Just because of the fact that if there's one thing Liberty Media does well is it creates these narratives, if not for anything else.
I didn't really hear anything from Yuki.
For next season's Strive to Survive.
You know, watching the race.
I can't remember anything of note, no.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the other thing as well, is to the point that both Nick and Todd have made. I can't imagine the bundle of nerves that man was, because it is one thing to get your debut in the quote unquote big leagues, but then to have it in your home race and the inevitable pressure of not only does he want to win, but I have a feeling that even some of the drivers on the grid want him to succeed well, because he is one of those universally adored people within his industry. And that's saying something, because as we've always been prone to mention, Formula One drivers don't like the sniff of somebody being better at them at any aspect of life. But it seems that Yuki is Miss Congeniality in a sense that he's everyone's second favorite person to hang out with outside of themselves.
So what's up with Bahrain? Are we... Yeah, it's the worst track.
So then
all
it becomes
fans,
the race
all
of the
drivers
century, and then
can't
we can
stand
all gain our listeners. No. Yeah, let's do it.
The interesting thing about Bahrain is like it's basically always where testing seems to be, right? Over the last handful of years. So like the drivers have way more experience at this track than anywhere else, which is why we saw 6 rookies in the first practice session today, which is insane because I can't remember the last time we saw 6 rookies testing at the same time. But like this year is also filled with rookies, so what gives? Like I don't know.
No, I think that's exactly it. Like they have so much data on this track, and they tested this year at Bahrain.
Yeah.
So like they already know how the car is going to behave there. It's just bringing updates probably or tweaks from the preseason. So why not give the rookies a go and see what they do and feel and whatnot? So I don't think we're gonna see much out of practice. It will be. We kind of talked about it in the pre-show. I haven't watched practice yet, but apparently Yuki's not lighting the timesheet ablaze. So maybe this is a struggle weekend for Yuki because by all accounts, the Red Bull's also bad here. So we probably won't see a Max win unless it's just Max being Thanos and inevitable. God, I don't.
Who won last year?
Good question. Well, Max was already out there questioning the car.
Max Verstappen by 22 seconds.
Double it, Max. If
Well,
you're really
so
the driver that you say
I
you
guess
are,
this is
double
kind
that
of
margin.
going back to
Make
what you
this
were
the
saying
most
about the
boring.
clean air, right? Like, is this just like, I know that like clean air is always going to be an advantage physics, right? Like I get how this works, but is it more drastic this year for some reason? Is there something that's changed that, like if Lando just can't get to Max's pace or vice versa, like if whoever's out in front is just out in front having a good old time, like that's not a fun way for fans to participate in racing. Not that I, like I don't understand like how it works, but it seems like that's like the blame game is pointing to that with everyone, right?
Yeah. So to answer your question, and I am again not a fluid dynamicist. I don't even know what the right term is. But they are finding all these little tweaks in the regulations that they're like, because all the regulations are like your car has to fit within this box, right? And obviously it's more than a box. It's a pretty specified shape, but they're finding areas in which they can attach little furniture to the upper side of the car or whatever to create more downforce or lessen drag or move the airflow around to specific parts of the car. And the more that they do that, the more they create the dirty air that was the problem at the end of the last regulation set. And this new regulation was supposed to be all about underbody downforce, like vacuuming the car to the ground, basically. And they still have that, but they also have found little tidbits. You can see it on some of the cars. I think the Ferrari has little winglets up near the driver's head, kind of on the sides here. And all the cars have something little like that. And the more and more stuff they stick onto the car like that creates more dirty air. So they're also learning more about the floor and how to exhaust, I should say, the air from underneath the car in specific ways so that it's advantageous to the cars in front, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point too. When I was watching the practice today, like Lando and Oscar, I mean, and I don't know if this is probably on every car, but I just noticed it on Lando and Oscar's car. The side of the car in the middle of the pod, like right beneath the driver at the very bottom, it looks like it's already been like torn up and shredded. You know, like there's so many little folds up and creases and stuff along the side of the side pod that I like actually thought that there was damage on the car looking at it just casually, because I'm assuming those little things are a part of this whole thing of like, let's just get as much downforce as we possibly can. We're still within the millimeters or whatever. But like that kind of seems like counterproductive for the rest of for the rest of the, I don't know, for racing in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we always go through this, right? This is the end of this era of regulation set, and granted, it was shorter, than the turbo hybrid era that we saw. That was like 8 years or something. This was 4 or 5. And next year we get another set of regulations, but
which we should talk about.
Yeah, they're really going to just keep. Engineers are engineers. They're going to make the car as fast as possible. Racing be damned, right? So they need to somehow figure out the regulations to put the emphasis more on mechanical grip, where it just comes down to the driver. Who's got the biggest balls, right? Who's going to go around the outside when you shouldn't, that kind of thing. And go from there, because this is going to happen every regulation set. Or they just change the regulation sets pretty, like maybe every 3 years, so they don't really have a chance to catch up to them as fast.
So speaking of regulations, the turbo hybrid era is 8-year run, basically up until 2020. Turbo V6s, right? Turbo hybrid V6.
Yes.
Now we're in
1.6 liter V6.
1.6 liter. Now we're in what? It's a 1.5 liter now, or was that prior to?
No, I think the engines are
going to stay the same.
The engines are the same as the last regulation. The new rule set was focused around the underfloor.
Okay, so the next set of rules starting next year is 50% electric power, 50% combustion engine power, right? Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, traditional. And then there's this whole thing going on where
traditional.
What's his name? MBS wants to potentially bring back V8s or V10s before the end of this next set of regulations that are scheduled to go to 2030. So we're going to have a 4-year window for this new 50-50 set of regulations, which is why Honda jumped back in to say, hey, we'll participate. Because obviously production cars, the technology is going to trickle down to hybrid vehicles around the world. Now, they were supposed to talk today. I couldn't really find any hard information on what happened with this conversation, but basically, the FIA's, was it the sporting director, left earlier this week?
Yeah, I don't remember what his title was, but he was one of the senior FIA guys.
He's basically like, you're not doing this for the racing anymore, so I'm out.
Yeah, it was more of a shot at Mohammed bin Sulayem just being a terrible person in general, and he's not doing it to promote good racing or a healthy championship or whatever you want to call it. It's just about making F1 and FIA money at this point. And he's just like, I can't in good conscience. I can't remember what his one-liner was, but I can't in good conscience continue working for this organization.
Yeah. So here's So Robert Reed,
seems like a conscious
FIA's deputy president of sport, announced his resignation, citing what he called, quote, a fundamental breakdown of governance standards and, quote, critical decisions being made without due process.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of said it in the Discord this week. It's not surprising. It seems like MBS, or Mohammed bin Sulayem, I'm going to call him MBS from now on. It's way easier to say. It's not mortgage-backed securities, though. Just don't get those confused. MBS has so many detractors and not many supporters, but Aaron in the Discord made a pretty good point that you don't necessarily have to have vocal supporters. They're just there on the back end. They're there for the weekends, but you don't have to have them being so outright. But he has pretty loud detractors from his leadership there, and I don't think he's long for this job, but somehow he keeps surviving it every year. He's like a roach in a nuclear strike or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It took
I
me a
was wondering
second.
how you were going to land that plane, and well done, Todd. No, I mean, no, you got it. That's all that matters. Formula One is basically Game of Thrones in the sense that every time you think they've finally killed off the big bad villain, there's like a new one who's twice as heinous as the man before. I mean, you guys were regaling me of tales of Bernie Eccleston and Flavio Battore, and then Vijay Mallya had his moment in the sun. But this guy right now seems to take the cake, allegedly. I would like to say that on record, allegedly, because I like my podcast host. I like this episode, and I'm not trying to get
quote shifted
assassinated.
moral compass. I don't know. How is that paddle shift in moral compasses? Do they just like up and down through the S's to make this work, or what?
If multiple S's are involved, then talk to Dr. Helmut Marko. Thank you.
That's
So I think there's no chance that we see V8s or V10s. Yeah.
And if you don't like it, you can follow me on Twitter at MadWatcher789.
So there's no chance that we see V8s or V10s. So
I hope this is the one good idea he's ever had. Get rid of all this hybrid BS nonsense. I know that e-fuels are a joke. Sustainable fuels, they're not actually sustainable. Whatever, it takes more to produce them than they're worth or whatever. But it is greener than using just straight up gas, right? Or ethanol. Ethanol wouldn't have enough energy density. Anyway, the point is V10s, the V6 hybrids sound like doo-doo. There's
that's
not a good...
only because you've heard the V10s.
Right, exactly. But having... The V10s exist already. Just bring that back. Put it on sustainable... I'm using giant air quotes here. Sustainable fuels to make it somewhat greener. And go from there. Just get rid of the hybrid nonsense. It'll make the sport cheaper. Lower barrier to entry for all teams. We might have, 15 teams on the grid, whatever. It'll be like the 90s. Glorious.
But Todd, I mean, to be honest, yes.
Formula One ASMR, the purring of an engine. No, to your point, it's exactly that, because wasn't it Lewis Hamilton that had that recent press quote about, just from an aesthetics perspective?
Well, and if you want proof of this, go on Laguna
Seca.
Seca's Instagram. They just posted some old clips of the V10s, and the sound of them is just insane. But let me go back to what Todd was saying. The V6 hybrids only suck if you don't know the V10s exist, right? Rohit, you might need to plug your ears for this because I'm going to use a Nike analogy. Sorry. But the Nike Air Monarch is only a good, comfortable shoe for the masses because they've never tried on a New Balance 998. If you want a dad shoe, you buy a New Balance 998. It's the best of the best. But if you've never looked that far outside of, your field of vision, then you're going to wear a Monarch and it's going to be a great shoe and you don't have to worry about it. So I think that's kind of where we're at with it. 998,
it was the
998,
the 99 V8. Is that
99 V10?
998. No, it's perfect. V10. Okay. No, it's funny because I'm reminded of it. Go ahead. Sorry. No, it's what we are. But I was going to say this. I had the fortune. So I was traveling abroad a couple of years ago for a business trip. And I had a coworker of mine who is based out of Japan. And he's a very sharp guy, an engineer, ironically, given the crux of our conversation. But he had a very peculiar habit. And the peculiar habit was this man was freebasing like there was no tomorrow. I feel like single-handedly he kept that soda alive in the great country of Japan. Now, that being said, I am also a big Coke head, if you will. And I was asking him, how does Coke Zero compare to Coca-Cola? Because I have not yet taken the ebony plunge, so to speak, of the Zero. And he goes, what are you talking about? I've only had Coke Zero. And my life's goal at that moment was to get this man an actual Coca-Cola and see what exactly would he do to that. And more importantly, what would the Coca-Cola do to him? And I feel like this is that analogy. It's it's great if you don't have that prior knowledge of something. The minute you see something like that, you're like, what am I doing? I've just wasted the last 6 years of my Coca-Cola Zero existence. I don't even think Coca-Cola Zero has been out for that long.
No, you're spot on.
My
I mean,
point stands.
so I have to push back a little more on the. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to see just V10s and that screaming sound all the time, but consumers benefit so much from all of this stuff, right? Like, we're not going to get into all the details, but like, there's like proof that you can go find that like the regenerative braking that existed first in sports cars, then in Formula One, basically became something that is used on the Toyota Prius, right? Like, all of those things actually happen, which is why the big businesses, the big car companies throw all this money at these sports. And I think that if they are competing in both sports, then I think it could be beneficial. McLaren just announced they're going to run in World Endurance Challenge. Yeah. So like, that's sports car racing. They haven't done that. I don't think they've ever done full sports car racing, have they? I mean, I know they've raced McLarens in that space, but like,
I believe everything I read.
It's a good possibility, and Ferrari has won Le Mans like the last 2 of 3 years, or 3 or 4 years, something like that. So, I mean,
in the hypercar class,
Toyota's up there all the time. Toyota Gazoo Racing, which you see on the Haas cars now, but like, there's so much crossover there. So like, I would be totally okay if we were like, okay, Formula One is just going to be all go V10s or V8s or V12. I don't really care. But like, if you take away the hybrid systems and you're like, this is just us burning money, so be it. I know that they've got to play the, we're green and we're environmentally friendly, but like, you ship all these people and these cars around in giant containers around the world all year. There's nothing environmentally friendly about anything you're doing. So yeah.
Can I ask a dummy question? With the V8s and the V10s, would the impact of changing to that engine type, and apologies if it's not even an engine type, that just shows how much of a noob I am when it comes to the technical side of this, would this create a similar offensive explosion the same way that right now a certain demographic of NBA fan or NFL fan says, hey, they're shooting too many threes, or there's too much passing in the game? Like, would it skew the narrative in terms of how the sport is being viewed?
Not really.
In terms of one particular
it would
style
actually,
of driving?
they wouldn't have DRS, or sorry, the energy, what was it, KERS? They wouldn't have KERS now, where they can, push the button for a little extra juice at certain points during the lap.
Yeah.
The NOS, yeah. So it probably would actually be slightly more detrimental to the sport as it stands currently if they just swap the engines for V10s. But they could make other changes to like promote, like I said earlier, like make it more about mechanical grip than aerodynamic grip, and let the drivers do the racing, whatever. But I think it heightens the spectacle also for the end consumer, that it's just like those screaming cars on track. Because I know that these current V6 hybrids that they have are still super duper loud, because it's like a 3-inch exhaust pipe coming directly off of the exhaust like manifolds. It's gonna be a super super loud car, but it doesn't have the same like visceral feel, like where you can feel it in your bones when you hear that like V10 scream.
It doesn't feel like a Honda with the exhaust disconnected, basically, is what you're saying. Like the little.
That's what they sound like now. Yes.
Bap, 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 bap.
But when VTEC kicks in,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it would really impact a whole lot, other than they would have to. There's just going to be a huge learning curve if and when that ever happens, right? Like, and I think the pushback, from what I read, if 2 of the engine manufacturers are against it, then it gets kind of tossed aside and they vote on it again down the road. So like, this conversation seemed like there was not really a chance of going towards a V8 or a V10, because Honda is basically not interested in making those engines. There's just not a reason for them to create that engine package for any other form of racing or for street cars, which I think is still like, not that any of these engines are making it into street cars, but the idea of like, hey, we just
LFA.
I guess was a V10. That's like the only car, right?
That was like the Toyota V10 that was basically a Formula One engine.
Yeah, and like the only thing I think of now is like even the supercars, the Ferraris and stuff are coming with hybrid systems. So
it's like hybrid V8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
I know it's not ever going to happen, but I think it would at least inject some more interest into the sport. I think we would have, if you could do like I know that there was a time, and I want to say it was during probably between 2006 and 2010, where there was V8s and V10s on track. You were allowed to build different engines. And I could totally see, like, now that Chevy's or Cadillac's involved, them building like a screaming flat plane crank V8 in a Formula One car. That'd be amazing. Because I don't know if you've heard those from World Endurance Challenge, but they sound also insane in like a different way. But like, just it feels like it's getting a little bit more too close to Formula E. Not that I'm knocking Formula E, because it also is very crazy racing when like they have all that. I don't know. Go watch a Formula E race. It's chaotic. But like they're not going to ever get to a completely sustainable fuel. So like, or a completely sustainable form of racing. So why not just have F1 be what it is and try to be more green, like you said, on the schedule, instead of going from like, oh, let's race in Bahrain and then we're going to go to Miami and then we're going to go back to the Middle East and then we're going to go to Southeast Asia. Like, line that up better, right?
Yeah, I don't see that ever happening though, because they're trying to hit, obviously weather. They're, like you can't be racing in certain places right now because you're still dealing with a ton of weather. And I think like, a lot of places like Miami, you're not going to race Miami, dead of summer, the way, like kind of what they do with like Bahrain, right? Bahrain's a night race because it's so hot right now. Like there's so many things that kind of screw up that whole concept. I do think that like it's an interesting idea to move to the V10s again. I think that it would be exciting for people, but it kind of in a weird way feels kind of like the live golf thing with like the PGA Tour. It's kind of like, we like, we don't care about anything. We've got the money. Let's just go do it, which seems to be like a trend in the entire world right now. But I don't know. Like, I think it would also open people up to go watch other racing. Like a lot of Drive to Survive fans that came into the sport in the last 4 or 5 years. I'll be honest, like watching World Endurance Challenge, WEC, sports car racing, whether that's Le Mans or any of the races, it's way more exciting than watching a Formula One race. It's a little harder to follow because you have 4 different race classes out there racing, but it's absolutely more entertaining through and through the whole entire race. It's rare that you have somebody that just like blows everybody away, because even if they are that much faster, they're still going to have to deal with traffic, every few laps or whatever. So, but I don't know. I'm just a fan. So what do I know?
Well, you know a lot, sir. Let's get some predictions to wrap it up with Bob Rizzle.
All the things. I'll go Land Dizzle for Fizzle, Max versus Stizzle for second Dizzle.
Is that George Russell?
And
George Russell?
G Rizzle for Trizzle.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he already rejected that nickname.
G-Rizzle.
Just because it's not it's hot.
Oh, on principle alone, he's rejected 85% of the things I say because of the great political dynamics between English and
I was just
Indians
thinking his hall monitor status would not allow anything of the sort. Are you listening to rap music over there?
You saying the devil's language?
Did you?
I say, old chap.
But did you see his recent advertisement stuff?
Out of the scully butt.
I didn't see it.
Oh man, it It perfectly encapsulates everything we think about George Russell. They just like took that and personified it into an advertisement starring George Russell.
Amazing.
God, what was it?
What is the advertisement?
It wasn't. Hold on.
Like monocles? Like biscuits? Something inherently British? I just want to know who's the one that convinced him during the initial driver's intro pose to do the hypothetical pushing the walls instead of raising the roof. He just pushed the walls as if he's pushing them to enter into the door that he's kicked down, where we all know that man hasn't kicked down anything.
All right, well, Todd's looking that up. I'm gonna go. I'm kind of right there with you. I'm gonna go Lando, Max, and Oscar.
All right, I can't find the damn advertisement. I don't think it was actually on his page. It was some other company's page starring him. So we'll have to come back to it. But just go search George Russell advertising. I'm sure you'll find it. It's pretty recent. No, that would be way too spicy for him. Are you kidding me?
No, I'm just referring back to the Ricky Bobby things.
It's like barely spearmint, not too spicy, just right.
Yeah. It's the rare gum that loses flavor upon one bite. Because even that's a little too spicy for our boy. He used the personification. Yeah. He is the personification of raisins in the potato salad.
But he does seem like I do appreciate that he kind of leans into
a lovely idea.
The persona.
Indubitably. Yeah, he should lean into it. Speaking of
what's your prediction?
Leaning into Todd.
Cut out. I'm gonna go. Oscar gets another win. I know I said that last time, but I think he'll have his race pace seems to be really improving. So we're going to go Oscar, Lando, Max in third.
All right.
And somebody crashes first turn. One of the rookies, like Ollie Behrman or somebody's going to... Man Bear Pig is doing fantastic.
I'm
probably the best of any
rookies. Man Bear Pig.
But, like, it's just going to be an unfortunate incident where, like, he gets Lance Strolled or something just run into.
Are you sure it won't be Tweak Antonelli who like looks at something in the crowd like, oh, a balloon?
It could
and
be
then all
too.
of a sudden he crashes into a...
All right, y'all.
Yeah.
That's another one in the books.
All right.
Find us Exhaust Notes FM on all the platforms, and we'll put links to everybody so you can find us individually elsewhere. Thanks for listening. Let us know if you're a new subscriber to the pod. We'd love to hear from you. Leave us a review if you enjoyed the show. And that's all we got for this episode. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Later.
Bye-bye.